Hello and welcome. I'm Joanna Junak and this is GFN News on GFN.tv. In today's program, Sahan Lungu, a THL practitioner from Malawi and recipient of the Kevin Molloy Fellowship with the Tobacco Harm Reduction Scholarship Program, will tell us more about the harm reduction situation in Africa. Thank you, Sahan, for joining us today. First, can you tell us what do you do and what is your area of interest?
All right. I am a tobacco harm reduction practitioner in Malawi. My work mainly involves educating or sensitizing people on the dangers of using combustible tobacco cigarettes and harmful forms of smokeless tobacco, such as snuff and chewable tobacco. While at the same time, I raise awareness about tobacco harm reduction products and intervention. My current interest is in health behavior change. Presently, I'm looking at how we can design programs or interventions that can effectively help people switch from harmful forms of tobacco consumption to safe forms of nicotine ingestion.
What's happening now in Africa in terms of use of combustible cigarettes and the harm reduction situation?
African countries at the moment are experiencing an increase in tobacco use rate. There are factors such as rapid population growth and an increase in purchasing power among individuals here is making Africa, especially in the sub-Saharan Africa, a viable market for tobacco products. And tobacco companies are intensifying marketing of tobacco and expanding tobacco manufacturing in Africa, especially in low and middle income countries like Malawi. For example, here in Malawi in the 2010s, that's quite recently, there has been an establishment of a cigarette manufacturing company, which was not there before, because Malawi is mainly known for tobacco production, that is the growing and export of tobacco, and not the manufacturing of combustible tobacco cigarettes. So this company, for instance, is able to expand in the country, is able to market the product using intensive marketing promotion campaigns, and at presently it sponsors the largest football club in the country. So right now in Africa, these factors are contributing to the increase of combustible tobacco usage. So if we look at the figures, 80% of the countries, 80% of the 1 billion smokers in the world come from low and to middle income countries, and Africa is largely part of that low to middle income spectrum. And 1 million of close to 1 million of the smokers are in Malawi at the moment, and at least 5,700 people die to tobacco-related infections each year.
Do you think harm reduction is a good tool to reduce deaths and harm from disease?
In terms of tobacco harm reduction, the concept is still new to most Africans, to most smokers, or to most tobacco users in the African continent, on the African continent. This can be attributed to, in general, to a lack of knowledge about what tobacco harm reduction is and what tobacco harm reduction products are. You'll find that a lot of tobacco users in Africa have expressed that they have never actually seen or ever used or to have ever accessed any kind of tobacco harm reduction product or intervention. At the same time, these tobacco harm reduction products are not easily accessible to most people in Africa. This is due to, in general, because the high-tech tobacco harm reduction interventions such as e-cigarettes and heat-not-burn devices are quite expensive for an average tobacco user here in Africa to afford. where a lot of general, where a lot of people in the population live below the poverty line, so it's very hard for them to access the interventions. At the same time, there are countries such as uh, in Kenya or Uganda where you find that there are bans or there are exorbitant taxes on tobacco harm reduction products such as e-cigarettes, which restricts a lot of people from access. So that is the main challenge with tobacco harm reduction in Africa. But on the bright side, there has been an increase in awareness of tobacco harm reduction, especially with people who are working in tobacco harm reduction, such as myself and a myriad of and others from across the continent who are doing a really good job at educating the people, the masses, that doing context-based research into tobacco harm reduction in Africa, and yeah, generally spreading the message about tobacco harm reduction and helping tobacco users access tobacco harm reduction information.
And what about easier access to safer nicotine products in Malawi, where you live? Are these products becoming more readily available?
No. The problem is in Malawi, because in Malawi, when it comes to tobacco control, we only regulate the export of raw tobacco and not the import of, only regulate the export of raw tobacco. That is where much of tobacco control is focused on, and not on tobacco products per se. So you find that yes, the sale of tobacco products is legal in a sense, but also legally, tobacco harm reduction products such as e-cigarettes are not they are not part of the legal framework in terms of like taxation on how people can import them. So you find that retailers would like to stop these tobacco products, but they don't know how they can go about stocking them, how they can go about importing them, or under what classification can they put an e-cigarette? Is it an electronic device or is it a tobacco product? So this makes it very easy, very hard for retailers. So for the few that do manage to bring them in, they have to really comb through the gray area of the taxation law and find out how they can bring them in and how they can sell them and promote them to the customers. Especially, and most of the times it is on needs basis. If I go to a retailer who I know that has supplied in the past, I can just ask that could you please help me find an e-cig, and then they can just supply to me on needs basis, and not that I can just go to a store and just find them. So it is quite difficult to access them. In terms of other harm reduction products such as snus per se, for example, it's just that it is not widely available. I know, but I have done a feasibility study on making on how snus can be accepted by women in rural areas. I had positive results on that, but the challenge still remains that there is no company here in Malawi that directly gets tobacco from the field and manufactures low-tech tobacco harm reduction interventions such as snus. There is one, but then they're still working on getting the approvals right. So that takes a lot of time. Maybe in the long run, the country will see an improvement on how people can access tobacco harm reduction products. Yeah.
Do you think policymakers and some activists are against the use of alternative tobacco products?
Yeah, some are. That is why in Africa, at least 6 or 7 countries have completely banned the sale of e-cigarettes and other tobacco-related products. And there's huge taxation on combustible cigarettes and tobacco products in general, and they are caused by some activists in tobacco control calling for African countries to heavily regulate e-cigarettes, so that there is a belief that maybe the evidence is not sufficient enough for African countries to just accept the use of e-cigarettes or other tobacco reduction products. So yeah, there are activists that are against this, but at the same time, there are some of us who are pro tobacco harm reduction because we believe the evidence from countless independent research that's been carried out there, it really shows that tobacco harm reduction works and it can help reduce harms and incidence of death to tobacco among tobacco users, from tobacco among users.
Last question, Sahan. What needs to change in order to help Africa decrease its smoking rate?
For Africa to change smoking rates, I believe what needs to be done is, I don't want to say particular, we would use the word change, but I just want to say what needs to be done for tobacco harm reduction to be widely known, and for most countries to accept that these novel interventions in tobacco can really help reduce harms and protect people from tobacco-related harms. So I would say that there needs to be awareness. There should be an increase in awareness. So people have to know about these products. People have to be aware of the science surrounding these products. So more of that, more awareness. So there also needs to be more context-based research into the feasibility and acceptability and accessibility of these products. Make them more research into how culturally acceptable they are within a certain context in Africa, a certain population, a certain aspect of a particular demographic, how they are able to access products. At the same time, there also needs to be homogenization of tobacco harm reduction products processed in African countries such as Malawi, Kenya, and Zimbabwe. We find that there is huge amounts of raw tobacco that is grown there. So what if we had our own tools to manufacture tobacco harm reduction products? If we can make, for instance, the low-tech tobacco harm reduction products such as snus, it is possible for African countries to venture into such, and after that, promote it to the masses as it being safer than the combustible cigarettes, because the evidence shows that these products are safer. At the same time, there is also need to be deliberate efforts, either policy-wise or economic-wise, to make tobacco harm reduction interventions available, the current ones that are there. Because at the end of the day, sometimes it's just a matter of policy. If there are enough enabling policies that allow for maybe medical practitioners, for instance, that allow for retail shops, that allow for retail pharmacies to stock tobacco harm reduction products and then offer them as alternatives to tobacco users whenever they visit these key areas that I've mentioned. So that would also help change the landscape of tobacco harm reduction and help a lot of tobacco users switch from unsafe forms of tobacco consumption to safe forms of nicotine ingestion.
Thank you, Sahan. And starting from next Monday, we will be uploading daily Christmas episodes where experts around the world will share their New Year's wishes. Join us to hear their hopes and expectations for tobacco harm reduction in 2023. And we hope you will join us in the new year for brand new GFN TV videos every Tuesday and Friday. Thanks for watching or listening. See you next time.